welcome to All Paws Pet Talk TV. I'm your host, Kat Michio, and this is Lulu Llama. Lulu, want to do high five? High five? Good girl. And here are our expert panelists. Dr. Richard Palmquist. Dr. Palmquist is Chief of Integrative Veterinary Medicine and Health Services at Centinela Animal Hospital in Inglewood, California. He is an international speaker, author, award winner, and teaches worldwide. Dr. Christina Chambreau, an internationally known homeopathic veterinarian, lecturer, and author, using homeopathy in her veterinary practice since 1983. She has worked with the Natural Step and is certified as Coastal Studies Florida Naturalist, sustainability expert for a healthy earth, Erit Bloom, professional pet trainer, author, presenter, teacher, and owner of The Sophisticated Dog, offering online training worldwide, as well as co-founder of the Freaking Awesome Dog Project, which helps people live their dreams with their dog. Joan Ranquet, animal communicator, teacher, author, lecturer, and energy healer. Joan has connected with animals professionally for over 25 years, working with thousands of animal guardians, trainers, veterinarians, sanctuaries, wildlife rehab, and therapeutic riding centers. I am your host, Kat Michio, and welcome to All Paws Pet Talk TV, where our goal is to create a place where others become more open to seek options and alternatives that become a part of the solution. Well, I must say I'm honored to be a part of the show and privileged to be amongst this incredible panel of guests and experts. We have a special guest today. His name is Steve Dale. Let's bring him on.
Hello, hello.
Welcome, Steve.
Hi.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you on our show. Steve, you have made such a huge impact in so many ways. You're a certified animal behavior consultant, and you've reached more pet owners over the past few decades than any other pet journalist in America. A little bit of trivia that I read. On December 19th, 2021, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot and the Chicago City Council proclaimed it Steve Dale Day, thanking him at City Hall with a 4-page proclamation for his advocacy for animal welfare. Steve, your presence convinced the Chicago White Sox to allow dogs at a Major League Baseball game. Today, ballparks around America have periodic dog days promotions. Steve, welcome. Your accomplishments and inspiration have connected to so many pet lovers around the country.
Thank you very much, Kat. I'm more than happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Dr. Palmquist, would you like to start?
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you, Steve. Thanks for being here today.
Nice to meet you.
We talk a lot about presence and about ways to reduce stress, and I think it's really interesting that you've been involved in several different things that obviously help connect people and animals. And one of the things that I think is most interesting actually is some of the recent stuff you've been talking about involving the relationships between dogs and cats. And, you know, it's sort of dogs have been a primary animal that everybody's been interested in. Cats have sort of gotten in the back. And now what's happening with some of the work that you're doing is actually we're bringing them together and seeing how we can help cats with their relationships with dogs, and we can help dogs with their relationships with cats. And of course, we can make people smarter and involve that whole thing. So can you tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing on that?
Oh, well, sure. I mean, dogs and cats have been living together for a long time. And I don't know where that old wives' tale came from, that it's dogs, it's cats, and it's going to be a world war between them, and we're going to have to hire Jimmy Carter to come in to broker peace between them. And none of that is true. In fact, are you ready for this? I would rather introduce a dog to a cat with a couple of caveats than a cat to a cat. Unless that dog has had a history of attacking small furry things, and if the dog can follow rules, unless it's a puppy, then we're good, no matter what. It's actually easier. Of course, cats can live with one another. They must, because in America, we don't have a single cat per household rule. Most people have more than one cat. In fact, the average, I believe, is 3.2 cats. So the average person who has a cat doesn't have a cat, has just about 3 cats, in truth. But dogs and cats, of course, can live together. And I just had experience with all of this. So we had a cat that passed away at the age of 19 and a half or so, named Roxy. That was about, 6 weeks ago. But 2 weeks ago to the day, we brought a kitten into our life. It's been a long time because Roxy lived about 20 years. Yeah. And we only had one cat in the household. All that through, Roxy was it. So we brought in a kitten we were going to name Barney Fife. But I thought a couple of things. First of all, people kept saying, is it a purple kitten, like the purple dinosaur? I said, no, the kitten's not purple. And then if you see the kitten, who you can follow on in social media, on TikTok. It's my first adventure into TikTok, the land of TikTok. It is Groucho _ the funny cat. If you'd like to follow the exploits of this little kitten at this point still. The point of this whole story is, okay, we have a video of this on TikTok, actually. So in the very room I'm in, my office, I brought the first moments, I brought Groucho into our home, about 14 weeks of age at that point. I closed the door, but they're like doors that come together. I don't know if there's French doors, Dutch doors, whatever I don't know the country. Doors, Lithuanian door, I don't know what you call them. But they're doors that could bifold, I think, is the word. They come together like this. And I did that, but I purposefully left a little space, like 2 inches. So the dog on one side can see the cat on the other and vice versa. And it's not only about seeing one another, they live with their noses, so they can smell one another. Well, we had something going for us. Our dog is 13. So it's like, why bother chasing anything, including the cat? But in addition to that, our dog has lived with cats her entire life. So she kind of knew the rules. So whenever the cat would walk by, our dog, when eventually I brought them together, which I didn't do for a day and a half. But when I did, and I just somehow knew our dog would play the game. So as our cat would walk by, the dog would look, I don't see a cat. There's no cat. There's no cat there. And the cat would go, sss. This little tiny cat would go sss, and look really big, or as big as Groucho could look. And the dog was actually intimidated a bit. And that's exactly what you want to see, right? Because cats are control freaks. And cats feel, even at this little tiny age, more comfortable if they feel in control of the situation. They're not threatened. The dog did nothing whatsoever to threaten, except if Groucho got too close to the dog's face. I'm talking the first couple of days, and then the dog would go, and Groucho didn't care. Because they also didn't speak each other's language. Actually, that's not true. Our dog knew cat language from the previous cats, but Groucho, being a tiny kitten, doesn't know much. It's a little baby, so Groucho was learning. My favorite story in the whole 2 weeks we've had Groucho is 13-year-old dog. And as Dr. Palmquist would know, a little bit of arthritis is probably going on. We know that is actually the case. And our dog has gone for PT. And the therapist recommended, occasionally when you get a chance, put a heating pad under the dog. Make the dog feel a little more comfortable. We did. We turn around, the cat's on the heating pad, and the dog is next to it. Apparently what happened is that the cat said, I want the heating pad. There was no growling or snarling or anything like that. They just switched places.
Yeah, and some dogs, a lot of times the cats will use the dog as a heating pad. You know, when they, like, you've got a really friendly dog, golden retriever, you'll come out, we used to have a lab, you'd come out and the cat would be, in the winter when it was cold, actually sleeping on the dog with the dog laying on the floor. So they work it out.
So did you put down a second heating pad so they each have their own heating pad now?
Well, that's actually a very good idea, but unfortunately we're not with 2 heating pads.
Well,
So,
go out and buy one. Your dog and cat each need a heating pad for sure.
Apparently that is true.
And I'm here to say I agree with you about the dog and cat thing. I live with 4 cats, 3 dogs, and 3 horses. And so I've brought new dogs in as life has gone on, because the kittens will be 13 this year. But I don't think I could bring a new cat in. I
understand, and you probably could, but it would take a lot of patience, and I'd have to hear about your situation. And maybe you're right. I mean, you know your animals certainly better than I do.
No, I mean, I know I could, but I also wouldn't want to rock the boat at this point.
Well, there's something to be said for that, So if you have a 28-year-old dog or cat, now is not the time to bring in a puppy or a kitten, right? It's not fair. It's like setting up great-great-grandma to babysit for a little toddler,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're going to cut to a commercial, and we will be right back.
Hey, buddy. This ball on? Stay.
Oh, I deserve it so much. That puts you say go now. Oh, what I would do to get a ball like that. Wow. I'm such a girl. Wow. That looks so yummy.
Okay, go.
We are all natural and drool worthy. Is your pet worthy? Only with Platinum Pet Treats. Subscribe and save up to 25% off. 10% of the gross sales are donated to nonprofit animal and human organizations.
Welcome back. You're watching All Paws Pet Talk TV, and I'm your host, Kat Michio. We are back with our panel. And Arit, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Steve, I have to say I'm 100% with you on the introducing 2 cats versus a cat and a dog, with the exceptions that you mentioned earlier. But I also know, because I do also have the pleasure and honor of working with cats on occasion, that a kitten is a lot to handle. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing to set your household up for success, just from the active kittenness point of view.
I love that question. Thank you for that, because some number of years ago, I speak at veterinary conferences all over the world. I'm very privileged to be able to do that, and have been doing this for decades, dare I say. And one of the topics I've been talking about for a very long time is enrichment. That is allowing a dog or cat to be, in essence, a dog or a cat, allowing them to do what they were born to do, which I feel we don't do a very good job of. Zoos have actually done a very good job of this for many, many years now. So I've been talking about this topic of enrichment for a long time. Now we know, and I'll say it again, now we know that not only is enrichment beneficial for the psychological well-being of our companion animals, but also their medical well-being. There's actually a tie-in there. For example, cats who urinate outside the litter box can do so for a whole lot of different reasons. One of them is called idiopathic lower urinary tract disease. That's a mouthful. And idiopathic just means we don't know what causes it. Well, it turns out sometimes we now know what causes it. It's a lack of enrichment. Lots of drugs were thrown at this problem over the course of years. I could tell you what drugs they were. None of them did any good. Dr. Tony Buffington, then at The Ohio State University College of Veterinary Medicine, showed repeatedly that it was simply a boring environment, a lack of enrichment that actually caused anxiety in cats, and anxiety caused them to urinate outside the litter box, or may have played a role in other medical problems. And we now call the whole thing Pandora syndrome as a result of that. All of which you throw, as I said, this drug or that drug or that drug. None of that is going to do any good. What does a lot of good, in fact, solves the problem, is simply enriching the environment. For me, enriching environments for cats and dogs isn't important, it's necessary. We need to do that, particularly since we keep cats indoors only. I'm all for that, but we need to enrich their environment. So to go to your question directly, it turns out, so first of all, we have a cat tree, and it's one of those giant cat trees. Not everyone needs that. What everyone does need, however, is to give a kitten, or an adult cat for that matter, multiple places with vertical space. Window ledges, bookcases, tops of radiators if you have those, a countertop you don't mind the cat or kitten being on, whatever it might be in your home, but more than one choice preferably, and preferably one choice in every room, actually. That's one thing. Another thing that is really important are toys. That's no surprise, right? But toys that they come in two categories for me. One is interacting with the cat or kitten, and fishing pole type toys with feathers of fabric at the end. All of that is great. But also toys that the kitten can learn, these are mine, and it won't be perfect at first. I mean, you've got a little baby who's learning and is having fun going there, going there, going there, and will get into trouble no matter what. But if the kitten is mostly playing with the kinds of things you want a kitten to play with, then the kitten may not be climbing the blinds, quite literally, and wreaking havoc in other ways that might even be dangerous for the kitten. And they don't have to cost a lot of money. They can. You can go into a pet store now, I'm so excited to say, or go online and find 5 zillion kitten or cat toys that the cat can play him or herself. I think that's great. But you know what I found?
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you for just a minute, Steve, because one of the key things that we have to be careful about are the toys that we're selecting from such a large amount of toys, because a lot of them are, number one, not sustainable, not environmentally sustainable, and number two, could actually be harmful to the cats. So there are toys out there that they shouldn't be getting. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. In fact, that's what I was about to say it. So some of the toys we have for our kitten include, I went to our recycle next to my desk where, the papers that I print out that I just don't need it. And I crumpled up a couple of those papers and that becomes a cat toy. When the cat's bored with it, or the kitten in this case is bored with it, goes right back into the recycle. I do need to tell you that on occasion, I drink some wine. So the cork goes to the cat as a kitten toy. And what I discovered, by the way, is that our kitten really didn't care for wine, which shocks me because I strongly disagree with that.
Weird.
But the wine cork just didn't turn on it. But that's the thing. Different cats, different kittens like different things. So figure out what your kitten likes. So far, the favorite toy is a $2 little mouse thing that our wonderful cat-loving neighbor got our kitten as sort of a house kitten warming gift. And that's the favorite so far among all of the toys, but I'm going to rotate more in, and rotate's an important word. And that's where enrichment comes in again. It's two things about that. First of all, it's choice. Kittens, or for that matter, dogs or parrots or ferrets, when we talk enrichment, we're also talking giving the animal a choice of what you want to do. Secondly, they get bored, So I could go to Petco or PetSmart or Pet Supplies Plus or online and buy $6 million worth of cat toys. But if they're all there at the same time, eventually my kitten would get bored with those. So rotating toys is important also.
I just recently built a catio on a patio, and I have shelves at all different levels, and they have to jump up to places to feed. And I'm a vegan, so all the food, the meat is all out there, and I've got a sink and everything's cleaned up, but they've got all these different levels and nets and hidey places, and I just go crazy making up new things for my catio. So
I love that. And, you know, we don't live in a climate where I can do that in a condo. However, we have one of those strollers. And as soon as my veterinarian gives me the okay and we get some heartworm preventive and flea and tick protection on the kitten, then out she goes in the stroller. And a leash and harness, by the way, as well. And that's the age to do it at. For the veterinarians here, you'll appreciate the fact we went to the veterinarian. And I went earlier than I wanted to go for a happy kitten visit. But I sensed, I haven't talked about this publicly before, but I sensed that there's something just not quite right. There were no outward signs, but I just sensed it. It's a kitten who didn't have the zoomies. Maybe it was just a well-behaved kitten. But I thought, and the most laid-back kitten ever, but I thought something isn't quite right. So I went to our veterinarian, and it turned out the kitten had chlamydia. Easy thing to deal with. It's common when you get kittens. I know that. So it wasn't the first veterinary visit, the kind that I'd want, which would have been a happy kitten visit for no veterinary, just to visit. Car ride is positive. The carrier before the car ride is positive. We leave out the carrier all the time. I wanted to go through all that, but I didn't have time. I just wanted to get to the vet. But still, it was a wonderful experience because we have a fear-free practice that we go to, and it was a fear-free certified veterinarian. And that makes all the difference in the world. Here's what I mean. To get a temperature, and turns out she was running. I was doing it at home, but my thermometer wasn't as good. So to get a really good temp, she did can I say this, Kat? A rectal. So how comfortable is that? So she was smart, our veterinarian. She saved it until about the last thing that she did because it's most invasive of all the things she did. And the technician on one end was giving Cheese Whiz to the kitten. On the other end goes the kitten. I have a video of this. The kitten had no idea that was happening on the back end because the Cheese Whiz was happening on the front end. I am certain if she goes to our veterinarian again, and she will actually in a couple days, it'll be a positive experience because of the positive experience. We set her up for success, even under those circumstances, the best that we could.
And speak a little more, Steve, about what you were saying that people can do if they don't have to rush to the vet immediately. They can get them used to the cat carrier, used to being examined even. Wouldn't it be great if your cat would let you look at their gum color and even do a capillary refill time so you could do and take their temperature? So speak more about what you can do at home to get them to be fear-free.
That is the best question ever because you can make a difference. And if you happen to get a puppy is a puppy, works for dogs too, of course, or a cat is a kitten at that young age, you can make all the difference by making an impression at that point. What you remind me of is I need to get a little pill gun. They don't look like guns, by the way. They look like syringes, and you could put a pill in there. So what I will do when I get one, I've got them here. I've just got to, have you seen the top of my desk? I've got to find it. But what you do is you simply put Cheese Whiz or peanut butter or tuna juice or something like that, salmon juice inside, and randomly every couple of days when you think of it, and then rotate what you put inside it. The point is something good is coming from that pill gun. And when you ultimately, at the age of 5 or 10 or 25, if you're very lucky, have to pill your pet, particularly cats, now the cat is positively predisposed to this thing and is expecting, wow. And then when you're ready for the pill, by the way, the first time you give cheese, second time cheese, third time the pill, fourth time cheese, something of that nature. But yes, you're absolutely right. I begin by brushing, and I'm guilty of not doing this either, but I am not guilty of getting the cat accustomed or kitten accustomed to getting teeth brushed. Handle the paws. We've already clipped the nails. They kind of didn't need clipping all that much, but I wanted to get the kitten accustomed to it also. You can control, the kitten doesn't need to scratch as much, because I want the kitten to scratch in all the right places. And we have lots of scratching posts, vertical and horizontal, but mostly vertical. And I was so thrilled the other day, I wish I had caught it on video, where the kitten, and when they get up in the morning is a good time because they're going to stretch and scratch, just went to this, it's right over there, you can't see it, vertical scratching post, and went, and I said, hooray! And, you know, you talk, Iris, about positive reinforcement for dogs. Fan of Victoria Stilwell, I know. And that's wonderful, but we should be doing the same thing with cats. When our kitten came home and used the litter box, I had a party and gave treats to the kitten instantly. When she used the scratching post, I did the same thing. So I've got treats around. I'm ready to do that. Aside from praise, and people say, well, cats don't care about your praise. Well, actually, I think they do.
So I'm just going to jump in and. Oh, sorry. So I'm just going to jump in and say everything that you just said, Steve. I want to just remind our viewers out there who maybe don't have a cat or a dog, maybe they have a parrot. You can do the same thing with whatever species you're working with. I have helped parrots learn to accept basically fluids being given to them through a syringe. You start with water or something that's a little bit sweet and tasty, and you slowly work your way up to something like, say, a tiny bit of vinegar that's not going to hurt the animal, to prepare them for the case where you might need to medicate them. So you can do this with whatever species is living in your home. I just want to emphasize that for everyone. I'm also a fear-free certified practitioner, so it's a trainer, I should say. So these ideas, they apply to whatever animal you're living with or working with.
And whatever age. It's not just for kittens. If you're adopting senior geriatric animals, which, blessings to everybody who's doing that. Gail Pope of Brighthaven adopted 16-year-old cats, and one lived to 34 and many of them to 30.
34?
And she would do this.
Wow.
Oh, absolutely. She did homeopathy, no vaccines, raw meat diet, and did this handling of each of the cats. So it doesn't matter what age they are.
34?
Yeah, well, have you heard of the guy in Austin, Texas? There's a plumber who had a cat that lived to be 38, and the veterinary clinic made asparagus cakes for its birthday.
Wow.
And I actually have talked to a technician who worked at the clinic.
I have a 35-year-old horse.
On that note, we are going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Hey, buddy. This ball. Stay.
Oh, I deserve it so much. That but you say go now. Oh, what I would do to get a bone like that. Wow, I'm such a girl. Wow, that looks so yummy.
Okay, go.
We are all natural and drool worthy. Is your pet worthy? Only with Platinum Pet Treats. Subscribe and save up to 25% off. 10% of the gross sales are donated to nonprofit animal and human organizations.
Welcome back to All Paws Pet Talk TV. I'm your host, Kat Michio, and we have our special guest, Steve Dale, and we're going to open up the questions to our panel.
Steve, I'm going to jump in here. So I feel like a lot of what we just talked about has to do with respecting animals and honoring their choices and creating a safe environment where they can thrive, not just survive, but actually thrive. But I know that unfortunately there are people who maybe don't take that same approach to animals. And I understand that there have been some connections found recently between animal cruelty and other types of cruelty. And I know you've spoken about that a little. Can you fill us in on some of what you've found out and what you're doing?
Sure. I'm speaking about it a lot right now. several decades ago, and it does go back that far, when I was on the board of the American Humane Association, several researchers led by Phil Arkow got together on a hunch at first to demonstrate that was more than a hunch. There is truly a link between animal abuse and violence of various kinds to people, ranging from domestic violence to mass shooters. Mass shooting wasn't very common at that time, sadly. It has become very common. And when the recent events occurred, both in Texas and in New York State, I had a hunch. And Wayne Pacell, past president of the Humane Society of the United States, now president of Animal Action Wellness, had simultaneously the same hunch that those shooters, both 18 years old, might have been guilty of animal abuse. And it turns out very quickly it came out they were. And I, people who do what I do say allegedly guilty. Well, it was in social media. People saw it. Many people saw it. So we need to do something about this. We could have prevented both those shootings if law enforcement, first of all, knew about it. And at this juncture, it's uncertain whether law enforcement knew that that was the case. Probably they didn't. And the parents of at least one of those 18-year-olds did know, and they never said anything. And people who watched this in social media certainly knew, and apparently didn't report it to officials. And the abuse was horrible. I mean, I'm not going to tell you here what it is unless you want to know, but it's just horrible. I mean, clearly, sometimes you step on a dog's tail on purpose, and there's someone's, that's abuse. That's not abuse. Well, trust me, what happened here was abuse. And the animals died as a result. So we need to be more proactive in reporting. We need to give law enforcement the tools they require to follow up. And there was a bill already in place, very coincidentally, to do that, to give law enforcement at the federal level the ability to respond and also point to them the necessity that there's an urgency to respond. So my hope is that this bipartisan effort sails right through. You could talk about gun control one way or the other issues that are partisan involving all of this. But it is clearly a predictor, potentially, of a very serious crime. And even if it's not mass murder, it's still a very serious crime. Oftentimes, it's domestic violence. Most of those who are abusive to a spouse or children are guilty of animal abuse. We don't know why, and I'm not a psychiatrist, nor will I pretend to even guess why. That's not what's important to me. What's important to me is that we can save animal lives if we take this seriously, but also save human lives.
So, Steve, here's the question. If I or anybody, any of our viewers, sees somebody doing animal abuse, at this point, most people go, who do I report it to?
We report it to local authorities first. And
which local authorities? If I called the local police, they're not going to do anything.
Well, that would be a shame. But you could actually call federal authorities. To abuse animals is a federal crime. Period.
See, this is where I go a little crazy because we link it to, it can lead to this and this is terrible, but we're not even talking about how terrible it is just to begin with that animals are being abused on this level. I mean, just first and foremost, that's horrid.
Of course it is.
And that's where I think a bigger effort has to be made.
Which federal authorities would you report it to?
The FBI.
So anybody can call the FBI.
Yes, they do have phone numbers and
and a website.
I don't believe it's a recording, or they do call you back, but yeah, they will respond. And if they don't take it seriously, they need to. And by law, if we can get this through, they will need to take it seriously, and they'll be given resources to do it. In truth, most law enforcement does know the term is actually called the link. And most people, not everyone, I'm sure, but most people in law enforcement really do know the term. When they go for continuing education, this has been for years now an offering. This isn't brand new. This link has been now proved over and over and over in scientific studies, and also been proved over and over as we follow the mass murderers. And depending on what numbers you follow, at least 40% or so have been previously involved with animal abuse. As far as we know, those are the ones we know. And we often know because they post in social media. So something else that has to be done is that has to be stopped. The social media platforms will say our terms of agreement say that if it's a graphic case of animal abuse, we will take it down. Well, they don't. And they need to do it. And if they don't do it, they need to be penalized for not doing it. Because
it's not just take it down, they need to report it as well. And when you go to report these kinds of incidents, if you encounter resistance, you have to continue to report. So if you report to your local law enforcement, you report to your local animal control, and if no one takes any action, then you follow those reports up in writing so that there's a paper trail that says this was filed. And it's really important to have that paper trail and to make people aware at law enforcement that you have that paper trail. So
I agree with all that. Yes.
You have to do that. You have to do that.
And I'm just going to add a note. Here in Los Angeles, we have a lot of people in office at a variety of different levels. If you find that you've mentioned it already multiple times to animal control, to federal authorities, to local authorities, it does not hurt to write your council person or your congressperson or your senator, depending on exactly how things are set up, your mayor. Someone is going to finally read your letter. And that may be when something happens. So if you feel like you're not being heard, we live in an era where it's easy to just change who the letter is being addressed to, print it out, send it again to a different office. I encourage people to speak up, but I will also say do it in a way that keeps you safe, because you don't want to then become a target and be threatened by the person you're reporting.
I was worried about that too.
And the only thing I want to add to that, in many municipalities, ACOs, animal control officers, they're animal control officers. So they have limited ability to do much about it legally. I really would go to, and in some places they do have law enforcement abilities, but I would really go to more traditional law enforcement personally.
That's helpful. Thank you.
That's really important.
I wouldn't be able to hold my tongue. I'm one of these crazy people that would say, stop! What are you doing?
Well, sure. I mean, if you actually see something going on. Yeah. But so if you're actually witnessing something, then of course call the police.
Yeah.
So take video. Take video if you're witnessing it.
That's smart. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I had an elderly client. She was an African-American client, lived in her city. She was coming to our office to bring her dog in for a rabies vaccination. And as she walked down the street, there was a shirtless guy with a little puppy tied to with a piece of baling twine. And he was hitting the dog in the head with a 2x4. And she just walked over to him, took the 2x4 away from him and said, I should hit you upside the head with this, and took the dog away from him. And because there was no ownership issue with this dog, brought it to our clinic, and the dog's head was actually caved in. I mean, it was literally caved in. And she just adopted the dog, and the dent from the 2x4, this is a puppy this big, right? This is a puppy this big, has a dent in the head from a 2x4. And that dog lived to be about 14, 15 years old. It always had the dent in its head. And every time the family would bring the dog in, we remember the whole story. And you can be an activist as well. I mean, if it's somebody that you can safely take the animal away from, take them away and deal with that later. But also don't get yourself hurt. But the bottom line is, depending on the situation, report it, video it, do whatever you can do. But, just act. And if it's not safe for you to act right then, just act in an anonymous way afterwards. it's not just a cat. It actually could be somebody's kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just make one other point that's related to this, which is, as you mentioned, Steve, domestic abuse often extends to animals. And one of the reasons why many times a person will not leave their abuser is because it would mean leaving the pet with that abuser. So I'm bringing this up just to say that here in Los Angeles at SPCA LA, which is actually in Long Beach, they have a program for taking in those dogs. And when the rest of the family goes to a shelter and often can't take the dog with them, they will provide shelter and support for that animal until the situation is resolved and the family has a safe place to live away from that abuser. And I know that this is a program that is now being borrowed across the country, that it's something that they generated there, but they're now teaching other animal control districts how to do it. So if by any misfortune you are in this kind of situation and you feel that you can't leave because you can't leave your beloved animal in this situation, which I completely empathize with that feeling. Find out if your local animal control district has a program to keep that animal safe while you are finding ways to keep yourself and the rest of your family safe.
Well, and that's fine, but that's not good enough. And actually, there are lots of shelters that do that all over the country and that have been doing that for several years, including where I live in Chicago. There are 2 shelters, at least, that will take in animals under those circumstances. But here's how we need to do better. We need to have facilities where the entire family can flee abuse. Shelters. But what I mean by the entire family is pets are members of the family, where they can go as well. First of all, we know people then are more likely to leave the abuser if the entire family can go. If I don't have to drop off the dog at a shelter. Sure, that's better than nothing. But I want to take that dog or cat with me to the shelter, and few shelters allow that. So there's a group now working on this to make it better. And in fact, they have. It's called the Purple Leash Project. And I don't recall, purpleleash.org, I believe. They're working with Purina. They're working with others. And it's an amazing, amazing thing because they've gone from, don't quote me on these numbers, I didn't know we were going to be talking about this, but it's something like 7% of all shelters allow animals before the program began, give or take a percent or 2, and now it's twice that. Wow. It's still woefully low, though, and we need to do better. New York City is doing better, and New York City has several shelters that welcome the family pet, and one even has a dog park for that animal, for those animals as well. And that's what we need to see all over the country. It's not going to happen overnight, but due to the Paws Act, which is really focused on this alone, on domestic violence and keeping families together, there's at least some money that's being thrown at this problem. And in my view, it really is a problem, because if we can get the person who's being abused to leave the horrible situation that they're in, then we can potentially save human lives and certainly can save animal lives, because there's always a threat going on from the abuser saying, if you leave, I'm going to hurt the dog, or I'm going to kill the dog or cat. And oftentimes they do. So getting the family to a safe place is hugely important for everyone. Keeping the family together, we also know if there are kids involved, is so beneficial to the children. There's this big change. They don't really know what's going on. The household is unhappy, to say the least. At least having the dog or cat with them to give and offer unconditional love. And what has been witnessed is these animals provide a sort of therapy for other residents as well. So this is the ideal, and this is what we need to shoot for.
Thank you so much, Steve, for all that you're doing in multiple areas, but particularly in this area. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for all of your advice on the health and well-being and safety of our animals. I want to thank the panel and Steve, Dale, our special guest today. How could our guests find you?
You can check out my website, and that's stevedale.tv. And I will leave you with words of wisdom, very dramatic words of wisdom. A penguin is only a duck in a monkey suit.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll leave you one with as well. If you have positive energy, you will always attract positive outcomes. Please find us on allpawspettalk.tv.
Medical information obtained from our website or the live show is not intended to be a substitute for professional care. If your pet has or you suspect they might have an illness or other medical condition, you should consult a healthcare provider. The opinions expressed on this radio program are not necessarily those of All Paws Pet Talk, this radio show, or their sponsors.
For all questions or info on sponsorship, email us at info@allpawspettalk.tv or visit our website at allpawspettalk.tv.
Hey, buddy. Got this ball on? Stay.
Oh, I deserve it so much. That but you say go now. Oh, what I would do to get a bone like that. Wow, I'm such a girl. Wow, that looks so yummy.
Okay, go.
We are all natural and drool worthy. Is your pet worthy? Only with Platinum Pet Treats. Subscribe and save up to 25% off. 10% of the gross sales are donated to nonprofit animal and human organizations.